Hi folks, Jeb here with TogetherMade, and today we're going to walk you through our new belt kit.
I'm Max.
This is my son Max. He's home from school for a while, so we're going to make some videos together. Alright, so let's walk through what's in the box and what you're going to need to make this kit. So we included the essentials for the belt making in the box. You're going to need to bring a few things to the table. You're going to need some sort of mallet. This is a wooden mallet from C.S. Osborne. That's going to be used for the punching. You could use a rubber mallet. I wouldn't use a normal hammer on the punch that's in the set. And you're going to need a knife. This is a Olfa knife that we sell on our site from Japan, and it's a snap-off blade. It works great. And then you're just going to need a screwdriver, and you're going to need some water and a rag. There's some optional things that we'll introduce, but that's sort of the minimum. So why don't we start by taking things out of the kit, and I'll just sort of tell you what they're for. So you can go ahead there. All right, so this is our 10-ounce harness leather belt. So this is from Wickett & Craig. It's a veggie tanned leather, and this is a very high quality leather, and it's going to last a long time. So that's our belt. Now what else we got? Okay, so we got our belt buckle. We can set that aside. We're not going to need that for a little bit. That's an antique brass roller buckle. We've got let's grab the other one. We've got two templates here, or we would call them jigs. One of them is for the strap end, and then one of them is for the buckle end. And there's a couple of different styles of ends that we can choose from as well, so I'll walk you through that. So you can set this one over there. Let's talk about the punch. So this is a punch. It's a 3/16 punch from C.S. Osborne, and this comes in every kit. So we're going to use that a bunch. And then, thread and needle. So we're going to need thread and needle at the end for the loop that holds the belt in place. And then this little tool does a couple of things. It's a burnisher. So if you've done any of our entry-level kits, they have a similar tool that has these holes, or a slicker, you might call it, for burnishing the edges. But this one is a little different now because it has some additional functionality for laying down grooves, so we can lay some grooves in our belt if we want to. And we'll be using this in future projects as well for laying stitch lines. So that's that. We're going to start. Oh, and then there's a little bit of sandpaper we're going to need. And then in the baggie, you've got 3 1/4-inch Chicago screws. So we're going to use those to secure the buckle. So that's it. So we can get that out of the way. So the first step here is, all these belts are 55 to 60 inches, and it's 10-ounce leather, just so you know. And we don't need it all. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick which end we want to start with, and maybe this end.
Yeah, let's do this end.
And we're going to start with this template here. And the direction the template goes is with the round end over there. And with all these templates, they're not broken in, so they're made with a tight tolerance. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to kind of open them up a little bit. We can do that. We've got punching mats. If you don't have a punching mat, don't do this on your table. Do it on a self-healing mat. I wouldn't do it even on like a cutting board, like a normal cutting board, because it'll leave holes. If you don't have one of these, you can do it on a thick piece of leather if you have one, like a 12 to 14 ounce. I don't have one out here, or on a sort of a smooth plastic cutting board. I think that would probably be the most common thing people would have as a cutting board in the house. So I'm going to just demonstrate that real quick, and then Max, you can do the same thing with yours.
Okay.
Let's do this on our cutting board. first, which is we're just going to open up the holes of our template. And if you have a little scrap of leather, we could cut a little bit off of that belt if we want. What's that, this belt? Let's just cut a little bit off of this guy. So let's just cut, a teeny bit off. What we're,
Do you need a little bit?
I'll use some of this one. And what we're looking to do is just make sure that the holes are open in our template. We could probably do both templates, get them both out of the way, but we'll start with this one. So I'm just gonna tap, and what I want to see is I want to see the bit or the end of the punch. You just break it?
No.
Oh, okay. Be gentle. You don't want to go in and out too deep at once. And just sort of wiggle it on the way out in this direction, Max. So with the grain.
Yeah.
So we're just opening all these up a little bit. The goal with these is that they're going through enough to leave a cut that you can then place your punch into once the template's removed. Okay, so that should be good there, and you can kind of see if you can get enough of it through to bite into the leather. And then when we come back through to actually punch the holes, we're not punching through the template. We're just putting this in the hole that we left, the cut that we left in the surface. Okay. So you got those all done?
Yeah, mine are, I think I could have gone a little harder.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. And then you can go ahead and do the same thing with the strap end template. Just get that out of the way. You'll notice in the strap end that there's, the holes are a different shape. They kind of have an oval shape and a circular shape. And that's because if you're using this template later in a thicker leather, or you could do it in this leather, you may want to use a bag punch or an oval punch. In the thicker leathers, that is a nice way to get the belt to lay better when it's on the buckle.
And you're going to punch right through the middle?
Right through the middle, yep. Cool. And you'll notice that the templates have some writing on them, and it's actually the tools, the specific tools that we're using here, that these were designed for. So they might work with other punches. I don't know. I designed them specifically for these ones, and so these are the ones that come with it. It's the Osborne 245 number 6, which is a 3/16 hole. And then the other punch that I was talking about that's available on our website, if you want to go for an oval hole, is this 151 1/4" Osborne punch. But we're going to stick with round holes today. Cool. So those good?
Yep.
All right.
Are we done with this?
Yeah, we're done with that for now. Okay. So we're going to start by picking whatever end we want to be our buckle side, and we're going to lay the template across the belt. And I like to mark the end, and so there's a couple ways to do this. These are awls, scratch awls. They're very useful.
Should I scratch around? Or just
Yeah, we're going to do round on this side.
And then
So
how close to there?
So just make that line so you can see it. That way, if you have to take the template off, and hold it side to side, just make sure it's exactly the width of the belt.
Yeah.
And then you can see, yep, cool. So you're gonna go ahead and stick that back on. Now, since we've opened up all these holes, what we can do is we can go through and make sure you're holding it down and just keep checking that it's flush on the sides. And then we're going to lay our first set of holes down. And yeah, it's funny because I do everything left-handed.
Yeah.
So if you want to switch it around, that would be great. Like do it your way.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
And how deep do you want to go?
So you want to go, let's see if we can do this. Did we get this figured out? Not quite. Okay, so it's deep enough. Where is it? There you go. So it's deep enough that it's actually cutting into the leather. So let me see yours. Yeah, so the idea is that if you can positively index into that hole, meaning you're able to put the tip of your chisel or your punch into the hole and it stays put, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, then you know that when you're punching those holes out,
Yeah.
that you're in the exact right spot. And it matters because things don't end up straight. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark all those. And you've got that line, so if you need to get back in line, you can just sort of line everything up.
Do you do anything with this?
Yeah, we'll come back and do the middle. We'll do the middle in a sec. We're just going to do all this circular holes. Okay, so that's great. See all those?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So I've got the glare right. This is a pretty dark one. We'll see if you can hold yours up. There, that looks really good. So you can see all the holes. There we go. How do you get that to focus? Yeah, that's good. All right, so you can see all those holes. So we're going to put our template back on. And now there's two things that this hole does. Out of the kit, you take your punch, put one side at one end, tap, and then one side, one hole at the other end, and you just basically, get lined up, put a mark at that end and a mark at that end, and then we're going to come back with our razor blade, and we're going to cut out the middle. The other thing you can do, and this is sort of an expensive punch, but this is the 151, the same series as that other one I was talking about, but it's the 7/8 inch. So this is the other thing you can do if you have this punch, is you can put that right in the hole and mark the whole thing. So anyway, but you don't need that because we're going to do it with a razor blade and the smaller punch. So that doesn't seem to be working.
No.
We'll come back and cut that in. So now we've got our lines for those cuts, and we've got all of these little holes to punch. So we're just going to go ahead with our number 6 and start punching. So if you don't have a nice mark that this fits into, go back and get yourself a nice mark that it fits into. I don't even really have to look because it's physically indexed into that hole. I mean, obviously I'm going to look, but so I'm going to hold with my holding hand, and then, and we're through.
All the way through.
Yeah, we're all the way through. And you'll get a feel for each thickness of leather and each style of leather has a little bit more density.
You don't have to pull these up, they'll just fall out.
Oh yeah, so the little holes, the plugs come up through the middle of the tool and they just sort of eject themselves out. So, okay.
Do I do the...
Yeah, so we're going to do all of the holes that we marked, including the ones for that post comes through. So all right, so now I've done the rivet holes, or the Chicago screw holes, and so those all line up like so. And then for the post,
Yeah, this would come out.
yeah. So for the post, if you're not confident eyeballing it, then again, hold the template in a way to use it as a straight edge, but hold it so that you can see the two circles. Let's punch the end holes out first.
Okay.
So one side and the other side. Okay, so that's straight. Now, I've got those two little lines that are scribed that connect those to make a big long oval.
Yeah.
You can do this, but again, so let's get this out of the way. So if you can't see the holes, then you don't know where you are. So put it there, and then, yeah. But we're doing it for the camera, so we got to kind of get me out of the way. Okay, cool. Now, what I would do is, turn the whole thing around.
That wasn't too clean.
It's okay, we can fix it. And that way now you can still see the holes and do the other side. Hang on. If stuff's moving around, we gotta just stop.
Okay.
Okay, so get your template on there. Stop. So if you go too far, you're gonna leave a mark there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now get that little part out. I find that,
Can I just clean that real quick?
no, it's okay. It's no big deal. But what I would do is clean it up. What I would do is just clean it up by eye. So I would just go like that and just clean it up. But this piece, the thing that you want to avoid is kind of going too far and then cutting the leather on the ends. Okay. So that'll be fine for now. My hand, I cut a lot, so I don't know if it's normal, but I just kind of like to eyeball this one. I find that cutting a 7/8 inch line straight isn't too bad. Cool. So, and you can see I've got a little bit of kind of keyhole kind of look.
Yeah.
And the truth is that when this thing is in there for, the rest of the life of this belt, it's going to wear that in.
Yeah.
And so let's just move this around inside there and see if it doesn't just clean that up a little bit. So I think that's already looking pretty clean, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And if there's a little bit of that you want to kind of clean up, then you can. All right, cool. So that is that end. Now, there's the last thing. Did I not punch that one? The last thing we need to do is we're going to cut the round end. Now, there's kind of two schools of thought, and what I would suggest you do is practice this on that same piece that you had before, maybe, Max, is take that piece, and there's two ways to do this. One is you can use the wooden template as a guide when you cut, and do it like this, and just kind of cut along. What I would suggest is that you don't try and cut all the way through in the first pass.
Okay.
That you just, oh, that's too much blade.
Okay.
Yeah, the amount of blade we want out in this is like that.
Cut like that and then.
Yeah, so do it on the same side as you're going to do it over here.
Do I need to scratch hole mark it?
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of hard because it's little.
Just keep something.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of a good thing we practiced.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little chunk of mine to practice on.
No.
Do you think this isn't going to be long enough
Yeah.
for you? I think it will. Or you can just practice on this one.
I'll just
So-
practice on this.
Yeah, some of this stuff is not a beginner's level, but if you practice a few times, you'll be all right. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's a reasonable shape. You can come back and clean that up with sandpaper. The other way to do this is like this. So if I've laid this line on here,
Mhm.
see my lead just broke, so I need to scratch off. If I lay this line on here, you might have better luck just doing it like this by eye. And so I would try that and just see if that gives you a cleaner shape. Okay, so that's what I got. And again, it's nice to start on this end because this is going to be on the back side of the buckle. So if you see a little bit that you want to kind of clean up, you can take the sandpaper that's underneath and just clean it up. This matters more on the other side. So I would say, and there's more time to practice, so I would say practice a few times. How do you feel about that? You ready to do it? An eyeball. Okay. All right, let's get all this stuff out of the way. And so I cut mine.
Already?
Yeah. So why don't you do yours? You're going to do it by hand like that? Yeah. Okay. Hang on.
What?
So why don't you just do this side,
Okay.
and then, so now you can kind of get around the corner. Cool.
Okay.
Now, it's really hard, that looks really good. So it's really hard to cut across that way.
Yeah.
So flip it around, and then you're cutting, there you go. Okay. Cool. And then it's got a teeny little nub on the end. You can just kind of, yeah. Cool. And then take your sandpaper,
Yeah.
and you can just round that out, And we can come back and burnish that too. The sandpaper kind of makes it real rough, so we just have, kind of shreds it a little bit. So we're gonna have to come back and burnish that, but you can trim that a little bit. All right, cool. So now it's time for our custom fit. Why don't we see if they can see our hole patterns in our middle? Sweet. All right, so grab your buckle. And the way that this works is,
Oh, it's getting strong.
yeah, it's okay. So if the belt's gonna look like this loop here, this curvy part, see this curvy part?
Yeah.
That's my size. See this curvy part?
Yeah.
There's a bent part. The bent part comes through, and then we're like this. So, and then what we're gonna do is take one of our Chicago screws. Do you have a bag of those?
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we share those for now? And we just need the one because we're just going to do this temporarily. And so I'm going to put that through, and then I'm going to take the...
Like that?
Correct. And then take a Chicago screw. It doesn't really matter which way you're going right now. I would do the screwing on the back side just in case.
What are these tools for?
Those are for more later. we're gonna have a total of 3.
Okay.
Okay. So we're like this.
Yeah.
And if you do this screwdriver part on the back side, if you slip, you stab the back side. All right. So put the other piece in first.
What are
Oh,
those?
you got it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, I'll hold it. You don't need to go super tight.
What are they called? Chicago screws.
I don't know the answer to that. Because I'm pretty sure they're not made in Chicago.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're gonna have to stand up and put that through whichever, doesn't matter which direction. You have to do this with pants. So
Or if you have shorts.
yeah, wherever you're gonna wear your belt, you need to actually size it here. So we made that mistake where we made some with my daughter, but they didn't have pants with loops, and they ended up not fitting because they weren't in the right place. So put it there, and how we're going to do this is get it to where it needs to be, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull it tight, and then we're going to put a mark. You can use the awl, or I'll just use this. We're going to put a mark tight where that would be. So it's going to be right there, right? So that's where that would come through. And we pull it tight just because it's, it's actually going to sit there once that thing lays down.
In case I lose some weight.
In case you lose some weight. And then that's good. So you're going to have a lot of extra.
Yeah.
Okay, so what that mark is now is going to be our center hole. Okay, so I'm going to take that mark. Why don't you take that mark and just roughly, it doesn't need to be super exact, but like you want to know where it is. Okay, so all I'm doing is lining it
You
up
need to
by
do that for
eye.
yourself?
Don't poke through from the back, but just line it up roughly in the middle because that's where we're going to punch our middle hole.
And then can I
Just put a little dot. Yeah, that's fine. All right.
so do you need to do that? Oh wait, because
That belt's not going to fit me. So you go ahead and do that with that one.
well, can't we just measure?
Yeah, we could. We could just do that. Where's that little dot?
There.
Cool. All right. So let's get those two together. Max wanted both colors, so we're gonna do that
So
right
there.
now. Yeah. Cool. That is not in the middle, but it will be okay. That's fine. Let it be.
There you go.
All right. Cool. So now we're working on this end. So we need our other template. And here's what we're doing. There's 7 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The middle hole right here. So if you have 3 on one side and 3 on the other,
Where is it? That's
it's like way
Here.
down here. You're gonna make 2 belts.
okay.
Um,
Right.
3 on one side, 1, 2, 3. 3 on the other side, 1, 2, 3. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. So here we are. Now we have to choose which style of tip we're going to do. There's the English point or the round. The English point is actually easier to cut because the technique that I like to use for that is to hold it on and then to cut there and to cut there, and it just sort of is a one motion cut
Yeah.
instead of trying to do the round cut or this round one. Either way. So again, line up on the middle hole, and you just double check that, okay? That you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's well.
Could you give me more big holes? Because I'm gonna get big, not small. If I have this for a long.
Oh, you want to grow?
Yeah.
If you want one to grow, then you could move it over one.
Like that? No. That way.
You would slide it that way,
This way?
right? Because then the whole thing gets longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that what you want me to do with this one?
Yes.
I'm going to do this one exactly on.
Okay,
You can
I'm
make.
gonna-
So Max wants to make his so he has room to grow, because he's probably going to be a little bit bigger. All right, so, but I am gonna make this one exactly his size now, so that when we demonstrate that, it looks perfect. All right, so I'm gonna just hold that there. I'm gonna mark my end. Do you want English tip or round tip?
English.
Okay, how about if you do English on that one and I'll do round on this one?
Okay.
Or, it doesn't matter. Those guys already saw how to do round, so. All right, so here we are. I marked the end. I'm double checking. You know,
If I were to do English tip on here, how would I?
if you were to do English tip, you mark the end. So just mark the end for length, and make sure that the buckle is down here. Because one time I was making one with somebody, and they put the template on this way.
But wouldn't I want it on this side though?
No, the point is that the end
Oh,
faces
okay,
away
yeah.
from your buckle. I made one with somebody, and they cut their belt the wrong direction.
Oh, okay.
So
That makes
anyway, so just double check a few things here, because this is the thing that's kind of the difference between the intermediate projects and the beginner projects is you actually can kind of make a mistake on this one. So I've got 3 on each side, and I've got my end marked. And now I'm going to punch all these holes out. And be real steady. This part's super important. If these holes are not lined up, it looks bad. And this is the sort of the evolution of your craft is, you know, the difference between making something that's functional and making something that really looks great is things like making sure that this line is totally straight.
Yeah.
So every time, just make sure that you've got that lined up on each side. The template is the exact size of the belt, so
I can't. I'm just gonna have to go harder.
you're not trying to punch all the way through. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, when we opened up the holes before, it was
yeah,
so that
yeah,
we could
yeah.
have these little marks,
Yeah.
so that,
And then we could.
and then you punch them. So, guys, we're not trying to do this
We're
right
not
now.
trying to do this.
Correct. So we're not trying to punch the holes through the template. What we're trying to do is mark the holes like we did before in a way that when we come back, they're indexed to our tool. So I'm going to line this up again.
I was just showing them how not to do it.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. That's really good, Max. All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so I've got my 7 holes, and they are straight because I was careful. So now I'm going to come through and the reason I can do this with confidence now, and you can too, is you've got that spot for your punch to sit, right? So I could just come in right here and it's locked right in. Awesome. These look great. And Max has never done this before, so this is good. Good case study. All right. Cool. So, how do yours look? Awesome. So there's mine. I'm going to show him yours, Max. Great. So do you have your little mark? Now, if you want to watch me do
I
this,
think my mark's like here. Or...
no, and the end.
Yeah.
The end.
I got it.
Okay. So,
I think.
um,
There it is.
yeah. So I'm going to hold this on here, and I'm just holding the tip of the English, and this is gonna sit about here, right? So, mine's round, but here we go. So now watch this.
Do you want me to do English or?
You do whatever you want. It's preference. Since this is going to be your belt too, you want it English, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's make sure that we're holding things in ways that are comfortable. So this angle for me is a comfortable angle. So I've kind of got it on a 45, and watch this, Max. So I'm going to come across. I've made sure that that's all lined up. I'm going to come across that guy, come across again, and I can just come all the way through if I want. And then I don't want to try and do that.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it, and I'm actually going to come the other direction. So I'm going to get over it like this, bud.
Okay.
Make sure it's lined up, and then I'm going to come back across this way.
Okay.
All right. Whew, nice. And then if you want the tip to not be pointy, then just, just give that a little trim. And now I will come back and burnish this to perfection. How are you looking?
Ka-chow.
Yeah, that looks good. So now the question is, do you want that pointy? Why don't you just deal with that later? All right, so we both did the English. That's what they look like. Cool. All right, so we've done the buckle end, we've test fit, we've got the custom punch, and now we are going, and we've done the whole strap end, the buckle end, and you can see we've got ourselves a belt. Now, we obviously need the little loop to hold it, and we're going to get to that later. But right now, we're going to do our detail and tooling if we want, okay? And then we're going to do our edge treatment and burnishing. So yeah, go ahead and pull your Chicago screw out. Now, this part of the process, you could take all day to do if you want. This is about kind of decorating and making it yours. So we've included a tool in here. Do you have yours?
This thing?
Yeah. And that's the new version of our slicker tool. And grab our sandpaper. I think yours is on the ground. And this has, set your belt aside because we're going to do practice now. And so I only had a little bit, so I'm going to steal some of yours. Before you start practice, you need to set aside a piece that's about 4.5 inches long. So there's a little teeny index in this template, and that's the length you need to set aside for that little loop that we're going to make later. So, oh yeah, I got more of this leather. Yep, that'll be enough because it only needs to be a 1/2 inch. So I'll set this aside. Max, good catch. We're going to make the loop out of that in a minute. But set aside that 4.5 inches for that loop. And, yeah, just mark it and cut it. If you want to be, yeah, that'll work. Cool. Now, we're going to practice, okay? Because whatever we do to that beautiful belt you just made, it's going to stay like that. So,
Do you want just half of mine?
no, just give me a little bit. I want you to be able to practice more. Cool. All right. So this tool needs a little bit of tuning before you use it. And first off, you don't have to put any lines in your belt. I'll take this belt off right now. So this was a belt that I made when I was in the mountains with some friends of mine, and we all did different stuff, but this one has a line on the top and a line on the bottom, and then it's got some tooling in the middle. That's sort of hard to see. But it's really a pretty detail to put a line in there. So this has 3 different sizes, 1/4, 1/8, and 3/8. And what you're going to do, Max, before you start that is, this is sharp because we laser cut it. So just where these little nubs are,
Knock them down a little bit.
Yeah, just knock them down a little bit, but just the outsides really need to get knocked down. So if you're coming across the face like this,
Yeah, and then you don't do need to do these.
you'll need to do those for burnishing later. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so I just knock those down just a little bit on the outside, not on the tip. Now you can test it, and I think 1/4 inch is a pretty nice detail. And if it's scraping, then just sand it a little bit more. Why don't you try it and see what happens? Try 1/4 inch. That's good. So the way that this gets used is you've got this little stand. It goes down on the edge here, and then you've got this little nub that lays the groove in. And so you can lay a really clean groove because you're using that guide. Yeah. And so that is what you don't want to do, right? So what happened there is Max drifted. So you need to keep pressure on that guide. There you go.
Yeah.
And you need to be smooth. So when things get wiggly,
Yeah.
that wiggle is going to be on your belt forever. So if you're not confident with this, then don't do it. Move on to burnishing. But this tool works great. A little bit of practice. You can set a really nice deep groove. See if we can get that on there. You can set a nice deep groove. You're going to do this step before you burnish, okay? Yeah, and you can practice with the different sizes and then decide which one you want. And you can put two of them together too. So like the 1/4 and the 1/8, if you look at this right here, if you put the 1/4 and the 1/8 together, it gives you this kind of pretty double look. So, you think you're good? You think you can do the 1/4?
I'm gonna do the smallest one.
Oh, you're gonna do the 1/8?
Yeah.
Okay. And so just make sure you keep it pushed up against, and then you can come back multiple times and make it deeper. And yeah, that's a real nice look. Yeah, and that's a good idea. Is you can do a little bit, stop, and this thing is you can get back to the same position. So if you don't need to do it all in one motion. That would be quite hard.
Just going back again.
Yeah, but just go slow. And keep the angle straight up, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be.
You don't really want to be sideways. There's a lot more. You don't want to be on an angle. You want to be straight up. There's a lot less motion.
Yeah.
Can control that motion. So, okay. Now, what I would do, so you can lay that in, and then if you want to do something else, practice it. So go ahead and get that back. We had a couple of, we've got stamps and tooling stamps in the shop, but you could take other stuff that you just have around and do some decoration too. This set is a set from Tandy that I like. It's a Native American set. And what I would do if you were going to use a stamp like that is I would use my template here to set even spacing, which is a really nice way to do it. So if I was to say want to put these every 4th hole, I would line it up, and I would use this left edge.
Yeah.
Put a dot there, 1. Then I would do 2, 3, and the 4th, 2, 3, and the 4th. And so now I've got, look at these dots. I've got these dots that are equidistant, and they're centered on the belt.
There's some cool.
So now use those little holes. So use those marks right there.
Yep.
And we'll just do a couple examples of this, and then we'll move on. But the idea is that now's the time to do the decoration before you do the edges. Yeah, that's awesome. The thing with like a centered, kind of spaced out, you don't want to hit that twice.
Okay.
You got one shot on those. Yeah, so the thing with I only put 3. The thing with a centered spaced out is, and that doesn't look bad, it's fine, is that there's some forgiveness in it. You know, if you were going to be doing like something very intricate and repeating like a weave pattern, there's not a lot of forgiveness in that if you get sideways. But with that kind of line and a centered, roughly equidistant.
Do you have the casing?
Yeah, and you can use other things around too. Again, practice this. Here it is. So this is a cartridge from Max's hunting rifle, and you know, we just stuck a rod into it, and you want to do some spacing? Why don't we just show them, because you're not actually going to do this, are you?
No.
Okay. Because we'll just move on to the next step, I think.
Yeah, I'm just going to do 2 now.
Okay. The other thing to note is that if you spray this, just kind of moisten the surface, the tooling leaves a, yeah,
I
that looks great.
Spacing a little bit, but it looks cool.
It looks really cool. So he's got this imprint from the bottom of the casing that has the caliber on it, etc. Okay, so you're going to do your decoration, and then we're going to move on to the edges. So we're going to use the same tool. Oh, by the way, one of the reasons you don't do the edges until after you lay all those grooves in there is because once your edges are rounded over, this tool is harder to use because you don't have that flat surface to work from. Okay, so get your belt, Max.
I want this way for me, right?
Yeah, so you're just going to burnish, but I'm going to show them, got a lot of stuff out. I'm going to show them how to trim the edges.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a step, if you have an edge trimmer, which is something I'd recommend you get. We sell this Osborne common edge trimmer. It's a size 0. So it's basically bevels the edges. Then now's the time to do it. You've laid your grooves in, and you're ready to bevel. If you don't have one of those, that's fine. It would be good to try and ease the edge a little bit before you burnish. Yeah, so that's how that guy works. Yeah, and if you haven't used it before, have you used that before?
I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, so I'll show them how to do that, and then, yeah, so that looks good. So that's kind of what you'd be doing to bevel that edge. Why don't I get you going? Do you want me to lay some grooves in this? Or we'll just keep it basic, or?
Basic.
Okay, cool. Cool. So since you're not going to use the edge trimmer,
Yeah.
What the edge trimmer does that's nice is when you go to burnish, it bevels that edge so that everything is kind of rounded over, and then when you burnish, it doesn't mushroom out. So I'd recommend that you kind of just soften that edge with something like something round, and that will at least knock it down a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pressing down on that edge and just easing it. I'm not laying a line, I'm not up on the surface, I'm just breaking that edge. So Max, why don't you just break that edge? Yeah, it's a very, yeah, that's good. Make sure you don't come up over the edge, because that will leave a big line in your belt. Mm-hmm. Anything you do right now, do under total control, because if you slip, it's going to make a mark that stays. Okay? All right, so now if you've got this tool, so now what you're going to do is you're going to bevel these edges. So I'm going to start at one end, and I'm going to move forward like this, and I'm just taking that edge and beveling it. and I am going to go through to the tip. I made it. Boom.
Jeez.
All right, so I'm gonna have to go the other direction on this side because I need to use my right hand to hold it down and my left hand to cut. So I'm gonna start the tip, just being careful, and then cat's trying to get in, and then come down to this long stretch. And be careful of the foot. So if you're doing this, the foot can leave a line. So
What is the foot?
the side
Oh,
here.
okay.
So you can see a little bit of a line there. That'll go away when we burnish, but I've seen it sometimes be. Cool. And now, I'm just going to do this round part. The round part's always a little tricky. But what I like to do is I like to just kind of come in here and pivot around my finger. Try not to jab yourself. And there we go. So I've got that front side. Now I'm going to trim the back side. The back side doesn't always stay together the way that the front side does. So if it is a little bit, wants to break apart a little bit more, that's fine. You're not going to necessarily get that same smooth cut. And make sure you're doing this on a surface that's flat and clean, because if you're holding this down on something dirty and grinding something into it, it's going to leave marks. Okay. So I think we're going to probably speed this part up. We're going to come back here with Max and lay these marks in so you can see what they look like. Now, my first belt that I did, I went all the way to the end.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that I love that. Other ones that I've made with the English tip, that looks good. So I think it's just a matter of preference. If you do have the English tip, I think going kind of straight off the edge, like just daylighting that instead of trying to come around and close. You know what I mean? Like don't follow the curve around. Does that make sense? It's easier to pull towards you,
It is?
I think. So the way that I like to do it is to be standing up over it, and I like to move backwards. Okay? So I like to,
Don't want to do it on this or...
No. So grab your belt. And I think what I would do is come and then go like that. Just come straight off the end there. And if you want help with that, let me know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm doing 1/8.
So do 1/8.
I'm right.
You're right-handed. Pull towards you.
Like this?
Yep, and make sure it's straight up. And then you don't have to do it all in one motion. You don't even have to press that hard in your first pass. Like you can do more than one pass. And just make sure that that stays pressed up against the edge. Yep. Yeah, and if you get a little messy right here, just go back over it and it'll clean
I
itself
think where I
up.
end off like kind of...
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. All right, so let's take a look at this. And what I'd do is, let's try and make this thing match. So I'm just gonna kind of do that. And then just try and make that match there a little bit. Pretty close, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. All right, so that's that. Now we're gonna burnish. All right, so mine's plain. Max has a detail in it. We haven't done any stamping. You know, we might just do our TogetherMade stamp right now. Where do you want that? I wouldn't put anything out there.
No?
No, because that's just like, if you look at that, it's just kind of a, this is like a maker's mark. So, you know where you'd want to put the maker's mark? If you look at the belt, typically they put the maker's mark
In there?
in there. And so, you know, that is this spot right here, right?
Yeah.
All right. So if you're going to put a maker's mark on here, maybe that's what you want to do. You want to keep it simple. And you know, so in this case, we've got a brass TogetherMade stamp that Max is going to put on there. One hit. There you go.
Nice.
That looks awesome. Cool. So we've got our maker's mark here. And if you've done one of our other kits, then you've got some saddle soap in a little tin like this. If you don't have any saddle soap, we have this on our site. It's just of Phoebing's. It's an old recipe saddle soap. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a little rag. I'll do mine. Why don't you do yours with just water?
Okay.
Because Max is doing the kind of like the basic, and I'm doing the advanced. So I've trimmed my edges with the trimming tool. I've beveled them, and Max just kind of eased his with the side of a pen.
So we're just going like this?
Nope. So we're going to burnish. What
okay.
you're going to do is you're just going to use water, and you're just going to just get the edge wet.
Okay.
And then with our burnishing tool, take your sandpaper again, and we need to sand out the smallest hole in this tool, which is this guy here. So sand that out until it's rounded over, and we're gonna need to both do that real quick. I'll do this one. You get that one going.
The smallest hole?
Yeah, the smallest hole. And what this slicker tool does is it just polishes those edges up, but also kind of rounds them over and end up looking great. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to sit down because, there we go. Cool. So, see this? So I'm not applying a lot of pressure.
Let me check this out.
That works good. It's a good idea. So I'm not applying a lot of pressure. I'm just, getting the edge moist and then using the friction to finish it. And you're gonna do this for a while. There's another way to sort of speed this up, which is nice, which is you can hold it on the edge of a table and go like that, And that way you don't have to hold it in your hand so much. So you'll find little tricks. There's a million videos on how to burnish stuff. We'll probably end up doing a video that's just burnishing techniques. But if you don't have saddle soap, you can just get the edge wet. And again, if you had some little imperfections that you wanted to knock off, get them off with the side of the razor blade, or kind of smooth them up with a little bit of sandpaper. So now that being said, well, Max, you're going to burnish, and if you have any questions, let me know. And if this makes a scraping noise, then sand it more. So you really want to sand that out. Let me hear. That sounds like scraping, maybe. It almost gets a sticky noise when you when you have it right. So now before I do it, though, I'm going to do a little bit of extra special work for you, Max. So I'm going to take this edge coat, and I'm going to actually paint the edge of Max's other belt. This is a brown. Probably could use a darker brown, but I don't think it's going to matter. So these are just sort of, this is going to look awesome. It's going to turn out great. And I'm just showing you a little bit more advanced finishing technique on this one, where I've beveled the edges, and now I'm going to paint the edges before I kind of seal them up. So I'm just using, how's that color look?
Good.
Good enough?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is just the Phoebing's brown. There's a dark brown too, which probably look great here as well.
We're done burning.
Okay, so we're going to be done burnishing. That process could take a while,
Especially if you're not doing it.
especially if you're not doing it right. So yeah, what Max and I talked about is that, this tool needs to be real rounded out, and you're going to be holding it perpendicular to your piece, and then, it should be glossy and rounded over. You don't want to be on the edge this way. You want to be straight in there, and basically it should be taking the shape that you sanded into that tool. Cool. So that looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So if you have some wax around the house, that next step, after you burnish with a little bit of water or saddle soap, what I like to do is I like to take wax.
Do
And
you have to melt it a little bit?
you can, yeah. Sometimes what I'll do is take a lighter and melt this a little bit, just to get it wet. Just to get it a little bit more fluid, but softer is the word. And I just like to put a little bit of wax on the edge, and then we'll do more of this later. But then I'll come back with just a piece of canvas, and this isn't canvas, but I'll come back with a piece of canvas, and my last step will be going over that wax with the canvas, and that really gives it a nice sheen at the end. So that's just a trick. If you have candle wax or beeswax or something, you can put a nice gloss on it at the end. Okay, so we've got grooves, we've got burnishing. Now we got to make our strap loop. So now we're going to take our 4.5 inch piece from before. Remember, we cut that piece from here, and we're going to get about a 1/2 inch piece off of that. So, if you've got a good eye, then just use your eye. Otherwise, take a measurement. I think a 1/2 inch is about the right size. Maybe a little bit less. So I'm just going to cut that. Okay. And what we're doing here.
But I do not have a good eye.
Yeah, so here, I'll help you. So I am going to take a 1/2 inch mark. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way. And we're going to put a 1/2 inch mark here, and we're going to put a 1/2 inch mark here,
Kind of already a little line there.
and now you can cut that. Okay, make sure you're up against the fence here. So that didn't work because we weren't up against the fence, but that's okay. That looks good. All right, so and if it's not quite straight, then, you can take a little bit more off. But you should have a couple extra there. I'm going to clean mine up just a little bit. I'm just going to clean it up. Okay, yeah, now, so go ahead and burnish that, because that's going to be a visible piece. So, same things. For mine, I'm going to do the same things I did before.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put a couple of lines in mine. Actually, this one doesn't have lines in it, so it doesn't need lines. But yours does. So what I would do is go ahead and put the matching lines in it.
Okay.
So you're matching 1/8. I think this one was the one was that the one you're using? Yeah. So the matching 1/8" lines on either side of that. Yeah. So I am going to paint the edges on this one. And yeah. So I'm going to bevel. And bevel. Okay. So, and then I'm going to paint the edges on this one. Trick this out for you, Max.
How fast does that take to dry?
That dries pretty fast. I could probably just wipe the edges too. All right. Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So,
We just burnished and painted the edges.
excellent. So, go ahead and put your buckle back on. But it matters which direction you do this from. And what I mean is that this leather is pretty thick, and these rivets are 1/4 inch, so or these Chicago screws are 1/4 inch. So what you want to do is put these two in first, and then put this one in, because it's hard to put those two in later.
Yeah.
So.
To sew it?
Yeah, we got to sew this. So, but before we do that, we have to size it. So let's get our buckles in. Let's see, where did mine go? Get your buckle in, but don't use the same. Don't use the back hole. So I put mine in backwards there. So if you look at this and have this facing down. So that the curve is down, yeah. So
And
then
you want this little curve down.
right, then the shiny side up, come through, and let's take some of these. I'm gonna do this one.
What are these?
What's that?
Are there more of these?
Yeah, I've got some in my kit.
Let's get this.
There's 3 in my kit too. All right, so now I've got my buckle, and I am going to just put one of these in, and then I'm gonna. You having trouble?
No, yeah.
Yeah. So you might need a hand. So
I got that.
You got it
Or
in?
can you just twist
Yeah, sometimes they get a little bit cross-threaded too, so you just kind of gotta watch for that. Is that going?
it?
I don't feel it. So if you, I can see that they're not lined. So,
I felt it twist for a second.
okay, that was probably in there for a second. So that's on. Now, that looks cool. Now put your next one in. Probably easier to do with a screwdriver. Lined up?
No.
Not even close?
There we go. Go.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll tighten those up later, but we're just sizing this now. So get that in. Get that one in. And get the other one in. Okay. So now I'm going to take this and we're just going to mark where we need to cut it. And so all I want to do is be able to slide this underneath of it. So hold it like this. See if you can see that. So I've taken this. I've basically, it doesn't matter which side, but I'm on the outside, and I've slipped this behind, and I'm just going to fold it across itself, and then push this through. Does that make sense? So if I need space for this underneath.
So like this?
Yeah. I need
So the rough side's up.
yeah. But I just need space for it underneath, right? But I don't need a ton. So I've just folded it over. You can leave it in there. And then just make a mark where those two meet. Yeah, so make that, squish that down tight, and then just make a mark right there. Yep. And that's where you're going to cut. So now cut that. I didn't make a very good mark.
I accidentally cut the wrong end.
Cut my belt in half. I'm going to just double check before I mess around with sewing it. And that looks good. All right, so we're ready to sew our belt loops now. I'm going to give Max a little bit of thread. I'm going to have a little bit. You don't need a lot. And we're not doing the saddle stitch here. We just put one needle in this kit because we only really need a couple holes in here. So Max is going to show us how to do this.
So you have your thread, your needle. Just put the thread through the eye. And then just pull a little bit over the top.
About 6 inches through the eye.
Yeah. And then kind of squish it a little bit and just poke the needle through the thread. There we go.
Okay.
And then pull it down over.
Slide that back down over the eye.
Yeah.
And then pull that tight.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So since this is only a 1/2 inch wide, we're just going to get a couple of stitches in.
You need to poke the holes.
Need to poke the holes. So I've just gone about an eighth inch in from each corner. Max has lines in his, so he can use those lines as guides. You need to decide if this is going to be a pretty stitch that you're going to have facing out, or if it's going to be on the inside. It could still be pretty. All right, so if you have an awl, make those 4 holes. If you don't have an awl, go find a nail in your shop or your garage or whatever. This is a pretty big nail. It'll work. But if you have a finished nail, that'll be better. And you can make those holes with the tip of the nail. obviously can't be so big that you're blowing through the leather. The harness needles are strong, but they're not quite strong enough to push through this thick of leather without a hole. So I got to make enough headway with the nail to get that through. And these are big holes, but it's just fine. All right, so I'm going to open those up with the harness needle so I don't stab myself later.
Yeah, just put it in there and just...
Well, you've got the awl, so you can just
okay.
open those up. All right, so you got those open?
Yeah.
All right, so I make this up every time I do it. So, but the idea is that they're gonna be together like that. So, I think that the idea is that you want the knot to end up on the back side, and so you need to start by pushing through from the back side. That's kind of the way that works. So we're gonna go through from the back side, and then I'm gonna go straight across to the hole across. And if your holes aren't big enough, open those things up with that awl. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to open them up with the awl.
Okay. Cool. So, see what I did? I went across.
Yeah.
So I've got one straight stitch across, and then I'm going to go diagonally on the underside to the next one. And again,
What's the best way to open these up?
the best way to open them up is to just push that in there.
Well, I'm not that strong.
Yeah. The deeper you push it, the fatter that hole gets.
Yeah.
I think you've got,
I was just struggling to pull through.
yeah, you got enough to work with, I think. Okay, so I went straight across, and then on the back, I started on the back side, went straight across, and then I went diagonally on the back side. Now, to make a diagonal look on the front side, I'm going to go diagonal on the front. I'm going to pull that all kind of tight and see what it looks like. Okay, so I went diagonal on the front. Now I'm going to go straight on the back. This totally sounds like madness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll show you what it looks like in the end, and I'm sure that there's 10 ways to do it.
Am I supposed to tie this off?
No, you just want to start. You want it so that your start comes through this side,
Okay.
and this ends up here because we're going to tie a knot with that at the end. And we want that knot to be on the inside. So I'm crossing back over. And then I'm going to come through. Back side. All right. So you kind of just, let me just make it look like this. Can you see? I'll finish it real quick. So I've got it set so that it's gone.
I kind of did an X.
X is good. Now, okay, so show them what you did. So you just did an X. Now, maybe loop the ends of the X like this.
Okay.
So I've got an X, but I've got the ends stitched as well. So, and then I'm just going to tie it off on the back. Pull it tight. Wiggle, wiggle.
Wiggle, wiggle.
All right. And I'm going to trim it to 1/8 of an inch with my razor blade. And then I'm going to melt that. All right. How are you doing?
Almost there.
Let's stab you in the eye with that. Cool. Well, while you're finishing that up, I'm going to do this. So, do you want this showing or not showing?
No.
Ha! If that comes off, just redo it. Showing or not showing?
No.
Okay. So Max wants to hide this stitch, even though
It looks so good.
it's so pretty. Can't see it there. Trust me, it's pretty. So I'm just going to slide this in from the end, and then it's going to go under here, like so. And then I'm going to get my last Chicago screw. Still yours. I'll find you one. And then I'm going to put that in. Do you need a hand with that?
No, I can get it.
Okay.
Hopefully. The fire's gone.
Yeah, we've been at this a while.
Yeah.
It's good though. You never made a belt before, and today you made yourself a belt. I'm just gonna go back and tighten all these up. You could put a little Loctite on this if you wanted, I think. I haven't had any trouble with them coming undone, but I think that's, you know, you got a little bit of back pressure from the leather. All right, buddy. So that's what that looks like. Pretty, huh?
Yeah.
All right, and then we're gonna see if we nailed it with hole 4.
Check that out.
Cool. Yeah. So just go ahead and tie that off. I'm gonna make sure that you've got a Chicago screw, because how many do you have? Where's your belt? It's on your leg. So you have 2. Where is that last one? I'm gonna go grab you one out of the shop. Where's your paper bag? Oh, here it is. Cool. So slide that on there. I don't think that's going anywhere. Yeah, just use the side of this. This is what you use to smash it down.
There you go.
All right. So slide it on there. I take it you're going to put that on the back side as well.
Almost made it too small.
All right. Cool. And this is, you know, pretty thick leather, so you might need a buddy to help you with this.
Will you be my...
I'll be your buddy. Wrong side.
I knew that. I was just testing you.
All right. So he's pushing with his thumb so that that is sticking through, and then I've got this now into the other end. You good?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll tighten these up for you. Why don't you try on this one, and we'll see how we did.
Got a lot smaller.
This looks smaller. See if we hit our middle hole. One, two, 3, fourth hole. Look at that.
I'd actually do third hole.
You do third hole?
Yeah, because I was like squeezing you up.
Oh, because you put on a few pounds during this video?
Yeah.
All right, well, that looks great. So can you don't need so much belly. Nice. Try this one. And this is your first belt you made. It looks awesome. Go.
Gotta go fourth in here.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, that looks great. That looks awesome. So we made 2 custom belts for Max here. That looks awesome. Now he could come back and do some more tooling if he wanted to. I think you'll probably do that with some stamps.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap on our belts. We got 2 custom belts here for Max. They're looking awesome. He's probably going to go back and do some tooling on these. Now that you've got that technique and the basic tooling that came in the kit and the templates, you can make $75 belts for the cost of a belt blank, which is about 22 bucks, and a buckle, which is, ranges from 5 to whatever. So yeah, I hope you use these again, and I hope you can make some belts for friends and family. You've got your punch, your templates. As you want to get more and more detailed with how you do your edge treatments, you can add some more tools, and that just makes things look more and more finished. But with what you just did in this kit, you ended up with a really nice looking finished product. And I hope you had fun, and I hope you make more. If you want to buy belt blanks from us, we'd appreciate that. We made our own belt cutting machine to make our belt blank cutting go easier. We'll do a whole nother video on our homemade belt cutter. But buy some more belt blanks from us. We're using these beautiful Wickett and Craig products out of Pennsylvania, veggie tanned and super high quality. So that's a wrap. Nice work. Boom. See you next time.